Right. Good morning, everyone. We'll reconvene an open session. We'll first begin with commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
I don't have anything today, thank you.
Commissioner Michael Schmitz, pardon me, Commissioner Kiefer, would you?
Yes, just a little programming note. I will be leaving our meeting today at 11:30, a little earlier. I know we're going to the Commission on Aging at 12:30 for our joint luncheon, but the Secretary of Aging, Rona Kramer, will be at the Commission on Aging at 11:30 for a roundtable discussion on senior citizens. And I was asked to be a part of that as our liaison to the Commission on Aging Board. So I'm going to step out a little early, and that's where I'll be.
Very good. Thank you for doing that. Commissioner Michael Schmidt, would you?
Yeah, I got a couple things here. First, I know was it 2 weeks ago we talked about the auditing of all the EMS centers, all the companies, and we excluded CRS in that audit. I think we should reconsider CRS because our audit is being very specific on how we're going about that audit. And I don't think we should exclude one thing. I think we should make sure all the companies are being treated equally and fairly and having the exact same audit, because then, somebody else could pay and have a slightly different audit. So I think we should reconsider excluding CRS from that audit. So
Was there a reason they were being excluded?
they already pay for an audit being done. So they have an annual audit, but that audit may or may not be exactly to the scope of the audits that we are doing, because we're asking for very specific things. And that audit, we don't know, and I think we should have the same auditor doing all 8 of the divisions plus CRS. So I would like to reconsider.
Yeah, I'm in support of that. I've had, even when that was first mentioned 2 weeks ago, I'd received calls and comments that we should include all or none, and I would support that. Do we need some type of, is that just agreement or motion, or how would we proceed to include that?
What we can do at this stage, under the RFP, we can make an amendment in the RFP that simply says all. It's that simple at this point.
All right, so I need a motion to do that amendment.
Then I'll make a motion to include include CRS in the audit of all the companies.
I second.
First and second, any further discussion?
No, I agree. Only because of the guidelines we set up for these audits is my thoughts were we could have somebody come in let them do their own audit and it wouldn't meet our guidelines, and we just wasted all that time and have to re-audit again. So yeah, I agree 100%.
Any other discussion? If
We're
not,
still going to make a decision on the audits after the RFPs come back.
Correct, yeah. I just want to make sure they're included in that RFP. That's all that I was asking.
we're deciding. Have first and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. 5-0.
And then I would like to remind everybody, today at 6 o'clock is the Ethics Committee open house here upstairs.
Yes.
Yes. It's upstairs, isn't it?
Upstairs in the old commissioners meeting.
Yeah. So just remind, there's the open hearing on that. Also, I've had a couple concerns, or employees' concerns, about how time off is being recorded and processed, and I would like the HR and the directors to, I guess, have a standardized process and look at the standardized process and procedures being utilized to not only take the time off, but recording that time off. The employees were properly and using taxpayer funds. So I think that HR and the directors and Rob come together and look at a new process or procedure on recording that. The last thing I have is school just started, and I know we have a lot of great programs here in Washington County with food and Micah's backpack and different things like that. But I would like to talk to the health department and find a way that, I know the YMCA has after-school programs, and they give snacks and they have food and they have all this excess, and they throw it away at the end of the evening once it's done. And we're throwing away good quality food that could go to a homeless shelter, that could go to Micah's backpack and things like that. But they're not allowed to do it because of restrictions. And I think it's a waste. And we have good quality food literally going into dumpsters because they're not allowed to do it. And so I would like to talk to the health department and figure a way that we can take this extra food and bring it to a homeless shelter, bring it to Micah's backpack, and utilize it in a much better, proper way. So those are my comments.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I have a few. Seems like I always have a few. Hey, I read the news this morning. It's good news that Washington County issued business project permits to the tune of 21 million. We had Dick's Sporting Goods, which is like, I think it's like 15 million going into the Valley Mall, old Sears building. They're gonna employ, up to 100 people. So that's good news. And then Newgate, which is a Bowman property, expanding it to the tune of 5 million, is gonna employ some more people. Cushwall Brewery, doing a pretty good expansion. It's a little over half, I think $600,000. They're gonna have tasting room and a restaurant. And, Sky Zone. Yeah, Sky Zone was the other one, which is, they're gonna put in some pretty good stuff like zip lines, that kind of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Washington County Business Development and everybody that's staying on top of this to keep bringing some more people in. So it gives us, everybody, more employment, more money for the county. Just a good thing.
Randy, on Dick's, is that 100 more new employees?
Yeah, 59 to 102, they said.
So how many are they just going to transfer what they have over?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a new startup. Susan isn't here. She could probably answer that better, but it's actually a new startup, I believe, Terry. It's the way I read it anyway. So, Wings and Wheels. I made Wings and Wheels. Boy, that was a great event. Beautiful sky. Got to see some A-10s. County was well represented there. I was pleased to see that. The airport was well represented. I saw a lot of county employees there, fire and rescue, airport personnel, our people. So that was just was a nice day. I was there a couple hours, and it was interesting. A lot of cars. The best one I've ever been to out there. I don't know what their attendance was, but an hour after I was there, I think they had said they had 1,100 through the gate. So if y'all didn't get to that, catch it next time around, because it was pretty good. And one request I'd like to make to Rob and staff would be, I'm getting a lot of talk about liaison or coordinator between the county and fire and rescue, somebody that would make a direct connection to the association, to the fire and rescue, and would work for the county, a position. So I don't know if anybody else has heard that. Maybe Jeff can, or Court, or Wayne, or Terry, I don't know, but I've been hearing a lot that that's what's needed. A direct connection, a coordinator, so it would be focused on the concerns. But anyway, I'd like to make that request. Someone could maybe check into that and
Yeah,
see.
it's staff to put like a job description or something together for
Yeah.
review.
Yeah, we'll draft a job description, how that is, and from what I'm hearing, and what, if I understand you correctly, looking for something with some technical expertise that can actually give sound advice on various parameters of operations.
Exactly. It would have to be a strong person, somebody that could go in and tell them this is the way it's going to be, with direction from us, and would be a county employee. So I think that would help. I don't know. But anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you. I do want to remind everybody, at the same time of the ethics hearing, there is a 6 p.m. tribute to our tribute to remembrance to our 911 volunteers, remembrance to all those from our 911 with the county emergency services staff, with a major presentation honoring those who perished. It starts at 6 p.m., so if y'all can make that, that would be an important event to attend. I do want to commend Humane Society for doing pooches in the pool last night at Marty Snook Park. It was well attended, and the Humane Society does a great job with our animals for doing that. I did also attend Wings and Wheels. I think at one time I heard they had 1,400 people through the gate by like 12, and there was 4 more hours, so that was well attended. But one most important thing about that event is promoted our airport to the community. It showed us there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of jobs out there, and how important the airport is as an economic development engine for our county. So kudos and thank you to all who made that event such a big success. I did attend part of the broadband roundtable conversation. I think Mr. Slocum was there as well. We had 1 congressman and 2 U.S. senators there. So That's great that they're paying attention to Washington County, how broadband can help our economic development. I also went up to Hancock last week. Hancock's Interfaith Service Coalition was one of 5 sites selected by Food Lion for a food pantry upgrade, meaning they're going to get a new walk-in, a new walk-in cooler, freezer, and continuous food on a regular basis to help provide for the needy in the Hancock area. So kudos to that organization and Debbie Cohill for having that accomplishment. And then I also attended an event down at Farnakeedy for their opening of their memory care and adult daycare center. As we all grow older and our parents are growing older, dementia and Alzheimer's are becoming major issues and all families becoming caretakers. This type of facility will provide you an option so you know that your elderly, your senior mom or dad, grandparents are kept or be, I wouldn't say kept, but have the offering of a service for them in an area where they're protected. As I experienced with my mom, it was difficult in those early days to find caregivers to assist while you're at work. So Farnakeedy, that was a very nice event, supplying a much needed need. And one thing I'm gonna say about the health department and school, my mom was a 23-year cafeteria worker and they had to throw all their food away. Even if it was packaged cheese, they were required even far back as the early 80s to throw everything away. So possibly could be a good option to explore between the Board of Education and the health department. That's probably gonna be a state policy. That might be something you can handle down at Mako to inquire about as well. Because they weren't allowed to bring one thing. There was extra piece of chocolate cake. None of the cafeteria workers dared to bring that home and share or give it away to some organization. So thank you for bringing that up. So that concludes my report. I'd like to move on to reports from county staff. County staff, Ashley, please come forward, sir.
Hello, Commissioners. Ashley Holloway, Director of Plan Review Permitting Division. I just want to say thank you to you, Commissioner Klein, and all the county staff that came out to the outreach meeting that my division put on. It was a great turnout, great support, and I just want to say thank you very much. The outreach meetings are to continue the connection between my division and the design and construction professionals. Just let them know what's going on with the division, if there's any policy changes or updates or anything to change when it comes to the whole permitting process or building plan process. They're happening quarterly, so our next meeting is December 6th, and you all are invited as well. But I just want to say thank you very much. It was great support from county staff, ranging from the Division of Construction, Division of Engineering, Planning and Zoning, Business Development. They just all came out and supported the meeting. So myself, along with the Chief of Permitting, Becky Gander, we just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley. Any other county staff with a report? Please come forward.
Good morning, Deputy Director of Human Resources, Deborah Kondo. I would like to request a vote for a request to advertise for the position of Planning and Zoning Director. This is a grade 18, step 1 position of $75,088 annually under the Department of Planning and Zoning. Work location is in the administrative annex. It is an exempt position. It is budgeted and will report to the county administrator. This position will replace Stephen Goodrich, who is currently a grade 18, step 11.
Commissioners, any thoughts, comments? If not, entertain a motion to advertise.
Motion to advertise.
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. County staff, next. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning. Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
I wanted to take the time this morning to give you an update from several weeks ago regarding some steps that the county was taking to reduce its overall electricity costs that we pay. Since that time, the county participated in a commodity bulk electricity RFP rate purchase with the school board as well as Garrett County. The successful seller for that was Direct Energy, and a rate of 4.918 cents was secured for a 5-year period. That is an excellent rate and really at historic lows for energy purchase. For reference, before when we talked about this, the county is currently paying around 7 cents for a standard offer service rate. The generation from the solar sites is still going to be credited to the county's accounts and will continue to pay the rate that's prescribed in the PPA agreement. And this 4.9 cents will effectively be the rate that the county pays on all remaining Potomac Edison accounts.
The only thing I want to add to that is that we also took in the investment grade audit. We did receive one audit. We're scheduling to meet as a committee within about 2 weeks. So we're bringing more information back to you on that.
That's regarding ESCO.
Yes.
Yeah. And one final thing we mentioned before, the county also signed several small business direct install work orders to upgrade lighting at the airport to LEDs, and that's at no cost to the county. Those lighting upgrades are anticipated to reduce the lighting electricity consumption per fixture 30 to 70%, depending on what's being replaced. And the value alone of those light fixtures that we receive is around $32,000. So that'll be an effort that they'll be undertaking over the next several months to do those installations.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. County staff, any others? Susan?
Good morning. Susan
Morning.
Buchanan, Director, Office of Grant Management, here this morning just to make you aware of a recent hotel rental tax fund grant award. The award was $5,000 approved to assist with the 2019 Middletown Valley Bank Crumpy's Donut Drop, which will be held on New Year's Eve this year at the square in downtown Hagerstown. This will be the 7th year of the event, which is free and open to the public and includes children's activities, music, fireworks, and most importantly, 5,000 free donuts. The application was submitted by the Maryland Theater this year, who is partnering in the event, and the event meets all 7 goals of the funding program. This is just for information purposes. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other county staff? All right, we'll go to Krista, then we'll come back to you. Go ahead. Thank you.
I have several board appointment, reappointments, and if we could just do, if you're in agreement, one vote for all. It's all for the same board, the Adult Public Guardianship Review Board. They would like to reappoint Diane Lewis to serve a second 3-year term as a local nonprofit social service organization representative from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022. Additionally, they would like to reappoint Ms. Susan Parks to serve a third 3-year term as a public health representative from July 1 through June 30th of 2022. They would like to appoint Brenda Gordon to serve a first 3-year term as a community representative from September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2022. They would like to appoint Gwen Leatherman to serve a first partial 2-year term as a community representative from September 1, 2019 through August 31st, 2021. They would like to appoint Marcia South to serve a first 1-year term from September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2020 as their Commission on Aging representative. They would like to appoint Bonnie Wenders to serve a first partial 2-year term as an attorney representative from September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2021. And finally, they would like to appoint Deborah Phillips to serve as a professional representative of a local department from September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2022. All recommendations have been approved by the Adult Public Guardianship Review Board members.
Okay. Commissioners, hearing that, is there a motion to support?
I'll make a motion to support all the members named.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing a first and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, would you have a report?
Yes, I just have
Please go for it.
something brief. I did want to let the commissioners and everyone else know that 2 of our employees, Rick Curry and Brandy Noggle from the purchasing department, who actually are sitting in the front row there, attended at the end of August the annual forum for NIGP, which is the National Institute for Governmental Purchasing. While they were there, Brandy served as vice president. Well, she is vice president of our local chapter, which is known as MPPA, which stands for Maryland Public Procurement Association. She has been the vice president, and she'll actually, it's expected that she'll become president of that local chapter in January of 2020. While she was there, our local chapter from Maryland did receive 2 awards. And one of those awards was for the highest number of NIGP members, which was 87% of the local membership, which is an advantage and was great for their continuing education purposes, their networking, and also for the active online communities that NIGP offers them. She also received an award on behalf of MPPA for the highest increase in membership at 26%. Aside from those awards that she received for her local chapter, she was actually given an award herself. And the name of that award was the You Rock Award. And I thought this was definitely noteworthy and worth mentioning here today. She received that award because of her involvement throughout the organization and her dedication that she displays through various activities that she does with them. So it is a high level of recognition. I wanted to make sure that people were aware of that, and we're very proud of her. I know I can speak for her director as well to say congratulations, Brandy.
Thank you very much.
That's all.
Is this where we get the crown, or?
Administrator Slocum, next. Or
2 quick items. First, congratulations, Brandy. You do indeed rock. So, the second thing is just a matter for clarification is the retirement of Mr. Goodrich is planned, and that's why we need to begin that advertisement process. Steve will sorely be missed, and I believe his retirement is in November. So simply pre-planning for that process. Procedure consistent for leave and planning recordation. We will certainly get that out and work on that, Commissioner Monel-Schmidt, and get the others, some other information that's been requested.
All right, any other reports from staff I may have missed? Seeing none, would like to go into citizens participation. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to come forward? Please state your names and address, please. Good morning, Mr. Hicks.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine. Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Okay. Art Hicks, 13523 Cherry Tree Circle, and that's in Hagerstown. And on behalf of the Diversity Committee, Chairperson, and we have 2 other members here that will be addressing you.
Zani Miller-Matama, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee.
Good morning. My name is Carlos Malat. I'm the Secretary for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I live at 77 Amanda Drive in Smithsburg, Maryland.
Okay. Very briefly, the gist of our appearance here today is to request assistance of the commissioners in some of our outreach efforts. Zani's going to talk to you about Morgansville days where we participated for the sole purpose of introducing the committee to the community and to seek citizenry volunteers to support the mandate that has been prioritized by the commission for the committee. So you wanted to share what happened?
Yes, it was a very welcoming experience that we had. It is the first of what we hope will be many. And as we were there and people came to us to learn about our organization and, well, our committee, I should say, and what we're doing and what we hope that they will embrace as well, we found several who would like us to come and give talks and presentations about our committee work. So I think that we're on the right track. I think that if you have anything at all that is worth the public knowing about or being involved in, you have to get out there. You have to just move into the community, be aware of and responsive to everything that you can, and certainly civic groups giving their annual rally-type days or involved in community days. It's a place where we should be. After all, we are trying our best to let them know that we are, in all of our diversity, a part of Washington County. So it was a very fruitful experience.
Carlos?
Yeah, we would also like to announce that as the Diversity and Inclusion Committee of Washington County Commissioners, we are launching our listening tour as part of our efforts. I would also like to thank Ms. Higgins for her assistance in preparing the flyers and pamphlets that we've been handing out, and also the presentation today. The tour will consist of several public dates as well as numerous meetings with community clubs and organizations, not only to inform the community of the existence and charge of the committee, but also with the intent to recruit members for our subcommittees, because we're going to need help in this important work. Our first listening session, as you have up on the screen, is going to be on Monday, September 30th from 6 to 7:45 at the Hagerstown branch of the Washington County Public Library System. And the second listening session will be on Tuesday, October 22nd from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Hancock branch. More dates will be forthcoming. More information on future listening session dates can be found on the Commissioner website. And county residents who are interested in serving on subcommittees can express interest via the Common Commissioner email address, which is contactcommissioners@washco-md.net, or by calling 240-313-2200. And thank you all for allowing us this opportunity to serve on this important committee. We appreciate
It
it.
would be my possession, or my request that those dates be commissioners' calendar events, so we are sent, we can lock in whether we can go or not, because as reminders. So thank you for those events.
Thank you, sir.
and those
Appreciate it.
dates.
Any questions?
Thanks for your service.
Thank you. Thank you for
It's a
coming.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you all very, I saw a picture of it on Facebook. I think one of the commissioners might have taken.
Yes, we did have,
Randy was there.
The picture.
we did have attendance, one of the commissioners attended,
Yeah,
so.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, appreciate that.
And thank you for being there.
All right, good day. Thanks for coming in this morning. Thank you. Are there any other citizens here for comments? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the Senior Center Fitness Park Partnership Agreement.
Good morning again, Andrew Eshelman, Director of Public Works.
Susan Buchanan, Director, Office of Grant Management.
Bradley Tridge, Chief Operating Officer of Washington County Commission on Aging.
We're here this morning to talk about the possible construction and acceptance of a grant to build a fitness center at the Commission on Aging property, the Washington County Senior Center. So first, I'd like to give Brad the opportunity here to explain a little bit about how this came about and the different partners and stakeholders involved with this project.
Sure. So this really came about through AARP seeking to celebrate an anniversary. I can't recall if it's the 50th or 60th year. However, last year they set aside funds to initiate a project where they implement a fitness park in every single state. So the AARP at the state level of Maryland submitted an application for this grant and was selected. And it came down between two different sites, Frederick County and Washington County. And the state AARP level is seeking to do this in Washington County.
So the way logistically this works, Washington County is the landowner out at the Senior Center on 535 Franklin Street. Senior Center and the Commission on Aging has received this grant, and there are a number of documents that need to be executed in order to facilitate this. So as I mentioned, there's a capital grant, which is for the fitness center, as well as a potential opportunity for a recreational grant that would be to the county for $3,000 to help support recreational programming as long as that money lasts. And then there would be no obligation for the county to continue that effort once those funds are exhausted. And the intent would be that those programs could be absorbed by Commission on Aging staff. So a little bit about what we're actually building here. It's a fitness park. It's essentially a park contained within about a 40-foot diameter area. There's different stations there designed to use the person's own body weight for exercise. It will be located, as I mentioned, on the Senior Center property at 535 East Franklin Street. And the facility will be available for Senior Center activities during their scheduled time, as well as the general public outside of those hours. The capital grant that they've secured is for 100% of the construction costs for the fitness park. The county's role in this is really to help facilitate the documents that are needed, as well as secure some upfront site permits and things for AARP and their installer to really come in and be able to knock out the installation in a short order of time. I mentioned the operations grant for the recreational programming that would be funneled through Jamie Dick on our recreation department for that and those initial funds that we have the opportunity to take advantage of. As far as what we need to do for this, there's a partnership agreement which really is between the Commission on Aging and AARP to accept the fitness park and the equipment, as well as we're looking to get a amendment to the county's operation and maintenance agreement with the senior center, really to spell out roles and responsibilities with the maintenance for this facility. So as it's currently structured, I mentioned how the use would be broken down, that the senior center would have this for their activities during their operating hours. The county would support by doing annual inspections on the equipment, and if any safety-related repairs need to be done, we would assume that responsibility. If there's any other accessories and appurtenances for the events, such as exercise bands and things like that, that would be the senior center would cover that, as well as some other ancillary things that come along with the structure, like a shade structure. So if that gets torn or damaged in the future, that's not a safety sensitive item. It would be up to them if they decide they want to replace that. Then at the end of the facility's useful life, at some point this is no longer going to be functional. We would then not be obligated. We'd have the option to decide if we wanted to replace this based on local funding, other grants that may be available. If we decide we no longer want it, the county would remove the structure from the premise. So that's a little bit about how this is all going to function. There's a number of people would be involved. Susan's here as well, would be involved with the grants and the funds.
And I was brought into the process very early on by Andrew and have reviewed documents that have been provided. And I have seen nothing that is unusual or would create any concern in these documents.
What would secure the area? I know you say it has a shade cover over it. What would secure it from outside interference that would, after hours, that would break up the equipment?
Really nothing. I mean, we could put a fence around it. I don't know if that would keep people out, but there's no fence around the senior center property at the moment, so it would be more or less similar to our current county parks. Some have gates, some don't. Some are more accessible than others, so that's certainly a risk. It's in a circular layout. There are some moving parts, but hopefully it's not as susceptible to vandalism, but it's always a risk.
I have a question about the insurance. I'm not sure. I spoke to Mr. Brate yesterday. Where are we with finding an agreement with the Commission on Aging that's to their liking as well?
Well, Tracy McCammon has contacted our insurance carrier to figure out the best way to allocate liability and risk as between the county and the Commission on Aging. We've worked very closely with Commission on Aging's attorney to fine-tune and tweak some of the allocation of who's liable for what, when, and I think we're close to an agreement on that.
That was going to be one of my questions. In July of 2017, when I had my knee replacement, I was going over there getting on the stationary bike to keep the mobility, but they were then required me to be trained by someone or certified to use that piece of equipment, because I think you had an incident where someone was hurt, so they were asking people to be somewhat trained or briefed on how to use it. How's that work on outside equipment when the facility's not open? How would that work?
So in terms of us actually being open, it would be a very similar concept, and there would be a trainer provided that would oversee the use of the equipment. That would only be during Commission on Aging hours. For the
I
senior
actually
staff.
think being trained on some of that equipment was important, because with all
Absolutely.
the screens and dials and different programs, you hit the wrong button, you're going 99 miles an hour.
It's not a
or so
bike
to
anymore.
speak, you know.
It's a computer.
And I think that's what, Andrew, you say you're trying to cover now, and with Tracy to figure out those details.
Coordinating with her.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions? There's a suggestion for a recommended motion to approve. Excuse.
Motion to approve.
There's a first. Is there a second?
Second.
First and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next on our agenda, illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance. Mr. Bradshaw, and would you all please introduce yourself and begin then? Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. Deputy Director of Engineering Services.
John Swalger, Stormwater Management Coordinator.
Alex Reed, I'm the county's watershed specialist.
Back in July, Dan brought the illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance before you. He did all the presentation, give you all the background. Just a brief synopsis. The county is required to enter into an MS4 permit for our stormwater discharge, and part of that ordinance requires us to develop this illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance. A permittee will satisfy the MCC by adopting the ordinance or other regulations means to prohibit illicit discharge into MS4, fields, streams, outfalls, inspections of MS4 to identify sources of illicit discharge, eliminating illegal connections or illicit discharges, and enforcing penalties where appropriate. The illicit discharge program must also address illegal dumping and spills. The program set up guidelines for identifying potential sources of illegal discharge and implementing methods to promote remediation. Once the ordinance is adopted, the county can then move forward with memorandum of understanding with the town of Williamsport, Boonesboro, Smithsburg. The MOU establishes the basis for cooperation between the town and county in implementing the MPDES MS4 general discharge permit. The town will use the adopted county IDD ordinance as a template to develop and implement its own ordinance. So we're coming before you today to request formal adoption of the illicit discharge detection and elimination ordinance.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
I have a question. I reached out to a few of you last week. I was contacted by some members of our farming community to see how this might affect them and their operations. Anything in summary you can share with us on what kind of an impact they might see?
So any types of illicit discharge that might be detected, so if somebody would be floating down the creek and see a pipe coming off of an agricultural field, we very well may be the ones who receive the report. Anything that has to do with agricultural lands would be channeled through the Soil Conservation District. Our local Soil Conservation District, as you all know, has a great relationship with the farmers. They know them all by name, and they would be the ones who would do any sort of investigating or working with the landowner to bring them into compliance. So anything with the agricultural community, the complaints would come through our office under this ordinance, would then be channeled over through soil conservation since they're the primary ag agency.
You mentioned a pipe running into the stream, so we're not talking about runoff from crops or anything in the fields. It's coming through a pipe.
Anything that's solely stormwater that runs off that's not covered under the ordinance, that's one of the things that it does not address. Obviously, anything that's being piped or being pumped into the creek, obviously that's in everybody's best interest to try to find out whether that is just solely water or if there's something else going on there. And I think every county resident would appreciate knowing that the creeks are being taken care of like that.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that this ordinance does not prohibit anything that is a standard agricultural practice?
Absolutely. Yeah, if it's okay with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, it's not going to be covered underneath this ordinance.
And it's not the intent of this ordinance to regulate farming practices?
No, sir.
Very good.
Commissioners, any other questions? There's a recommendation for a motion.
I'll move to adopt the ordinance.
First, is there a second?
I'll second it.
First and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all very much.
Next up, battery storage projects. Please come forward, introduce yourself and name and address.
I'll introduce myself first since I'm going to pass some handouts around. My name is Bill Schofield. I'm the Vice President of Future Grid Services at Customized Energy Solutions. I live in Indiana, outside of Indianapolis. My company has a long-term relationship with the Hagerstown Light Department, and I'll hand out some handouts.
I'm Stephen Wiley. I'm Vice President for Inalith, U.S. Business Development, and I live in Austin, Texas.
Nathan Freidinger with the Hagerstown Light Department.
So, good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to do the bulk of the presentation today. So, we're here today to talk about 3 battery projects, one that's actually already operating in Hagerstown, and 2 others that are slated to begin operation in either late 2020 or 2021. The reason we are here today is to request pilot agreements for the existing operating facility as well as the 2 new projects. Our proposal is to be exempt from both personal property and real property taxes. We would propose that we would pay 7 equal pilot payments beginning in year 4. And this is based, we have language later in the presentation that's more precise, but essentially taking the full liability of both personal property tax and real property tax and using the depreciation schedule, discounting the total tax liability by 75%. This request is consistent with agreement that the previous company entered into with Washington County in 2016, and we'll go a little bit more into detail there. So just to give you a little sense about these battery projects, first of all, they're very capital intensive, and they are also considered to be business property. Inalith battery is actually a very interesting technology that is unlike what you see today in the battery market that's using conventional lithium batteries. This is basically a next generation lithium battery that has some very important characteristics to it that are unlike what you see in today's battery. Preferably the fact that 1, it's very long lasting, and 2, it's non-flammable. These projects are very important in the overall commercialization of our technology. If we had to pay these property taxes, it would be the 2nd largest expense item that we would need to pay for. And it's also important because these project revenues are based on the local market or the regional market here, and the regional market can tend to be very volatile, which translates into slim investment return. So a little bit about Inalith itself. We're actually based in Basel, Switzerland, where we have most of our management team located. Our R&D center is just south of Frankfurt. We have 65 scientists and engineers who have been working on this technology for more than 15 years. As I noted, the 2 key ingredients of this battery is the fact it's non-flammable and has a very, very long life cycle to it. It's important for us because these are scale batteries that we can use for a lot of different applications, including grid applications and ultimately even EV applications down the road. We're also, U.S. is a very key market for us. That's why we're so invested into these first projects. This would be the first application that we would do beyond the project we already have in Hagerstown, and we also do plan to make these batteries in the U.S. So just a little bit about what these batteries do and what it's doing specifically for these projects is providing frequency regulation. So frequency regulation is a way of keeping overall supply and demand in balance. We can also do other things with this battery. We can provide energy to the system as well as provide other ancillary services. The great thing about it is that it has zero direct emissions. So a little bit about Snook. It's been operating in Hagerstown since 2017 under agreement that we have with the Hagerstown Light Department. This project provides both frequency regulation to PJM and provides power to HLD. We purchased this project and the intellectual property from a previous company called Alavo. We resumed operations in 2019 after buying this facility. We're also in the midst of making several major upgrades to the facility, particularly around communications, the batteries themselves, the control software, and the inverter that we use. And finally, CES did enter into these pilot agreements with Washington County in 2017 for this facility. The two new projects that I mentioned are slated to be 4.8 megawatts and 7.2 megawatts. Total project cost around a little under $9 million. As I mentioned, they would be operational either late 2020 or 2021. We have both sites leased from HLD under long-term agreements. Both sites are next to existing HLD substations or formerly housed next to or it's on a piece of property that once had substation equipment on it. There's really no other commercial uses for these properties. We have entered into both PPAs and energy service agreements for both these facilities with HLD. We will employ several individuals in the local area to help us with both environmental, civil, electrical services, and we will also employ an O&M staff here as well. We recently leased a warehouse in Williamsport where we will be doing not only storage of some of these batteries, but also repairs. This is a little 3D rendering of the fairgrounds. This is the 4.8 megawatt site that I just referenced. So if you can, the two large containers on the right-hand side are the actual battery containers themselves. And then next to them, there are transformers, inverters, and communication. This does not properly show what we'd be doing with the landscaping. We'd actually landscape all the way around the fence line so that the facility itself will be barely noticeable. This is the memorial site, which is at, I believe it's 300 West Memorial is the actual address. It's right next to a Praxair facility. Currently, it is unused. It sits between the street and the railroad. The idea with this one would be a little bit bigger, about 7.2 megawatts in size. And I think that's all I want to add about that one. Talk a little bit about the benefits that these three facilities are bringing. To HLD itself, we are making lease payments of approximately $7,800 a month, beginning the first month of construction through operations. We are also paying HLD electrical service revenues, estimated around $450,000 annually for all these three projects. HLD currently receives rent around $2,100 per month, and option payments that will typically be $4,500 to $5,000 per month in net energy sales. And then finally, there's also a potential for doing or peak shaving with HLD, which we plan to pursue with them somewhere down the line. And at this point, I'd like to give Nathan a chance to say a few words.
Thanks. Yeah, as Stephen mentioned, the rent payments and revenue payments are coming in timely on a monthly basis, and we do look forward to and are prepared to accept the other two projects planned in the future.
Thank you, Nathan. Just a couple other things I wanted to point out. During the construction period, these two new projects will create around 114 new jobs. As I mentioned, they'll be basically or focused in electrical and civil type of work. We expect to spend well over $100,000 on local services at hotels, restaurants, and rentals. And also we'll be using local suppliers for things like concrete, fence, and landscaping. And then there will also be the...
Excuse me, sir, back
Sure.
to the jobs. You have 114 projected jobs to be created during the construction period.
Correct.
Are you bringing the employees with you? Or
No.
are they going to be local people?
They'll be local, mainly local people. We'll have, the supervisors will be from Inalith, but the people who will actually be doing the work mainly will be coming from the local area. And then on operations, we expect we'll be spending about $175,000 annually between these projects. Again, these are things, everything from communications to the warehouse personnel that we'll be bringing in, hotels, restaurants, supplies, and electrical services. Also mentioned that we have leased a warehouse in Williamsport. We actually originally were only going to use it for storage, but it's become pretty clear that it will have a use also as we want to do repairs on the facilities. So what's the arguments for approving these agreements we're proposing? One is just the nature of these projects. They're very, very capital intensive and therefore sensitive to the business property tax. Secondly, unlike other renewable technologies like solar and wind, this technology is still very early in its maturity, and project revenues are also much more sensitive to regulatory change and higher costs. The projects do bring a lot of direct benefit to HLD, the city of Hagerstown, and thus the county itself. And there really isn't another opportunity cost to the county in regards to these properties. It really wouldn't be used for anything else at this stage. I just included this slide. This was language that was crafted before from the previous pilot agreement, so and consistent with what we are proposing today.
You have a dollar value for what the pilot will amount to over this time frame?
I have it on an annual basis for the three projects. It's approximately $200,000 a year.
$200,000 a year for how long again?
That's in year one. So with the depreciation, it will go down, but that's the year one payment.
What's the depreciation value?
So I'm assuming 10% a year.
So the way I understand it, we already have a pilot agreement with you for Hagerstown Light from a couple years ago, 2016 maybe?
With a different company.
With a different company.
Correct.
Did you buy out that company or just bought them?
We bought them. They were going through a bankruptcy process, and so we bought these assets through that process.
You didn't buy the company.
Correct. We did not buy the company.
Did you buy the assets at a much less than market value since it was through a bankruptcy sale?
No, we did not. In fact, some would say we actually overpaid, but it was very important for us to get this asset because it's the first deployment of this technology. And so it's a real marketing piece for us. That's one of the reasons we proposed to pay that.
It was also a messy bankruptcy involving local, international company, local company affiliate, and then there was a lot of contesting of which state shareholders had ownership of what. So it was just not a clean process that would have necessarily been logical in the outcomes.
Commissioner Kiefer asked about the personal property tax. in which you responded, do you have an estimate for what the real property tax would be for the property?
I know it's significant, just based on what we pay for Snook, it's significantly less, but I don't have an exact number for you.
In some of the argument, I think, and I'm having to remember back to when we worked on this. So my company, Customized Energy Solutions, worked with the original company, Alevo, in helping bring the project to Hagerstown. We have a long-standing relationship with Hagerstown, and we're actually excited to bring a good project and quite disappointed when Alevo went through its bankruptcy, which, by the way, the technology works. Their implementation of their come to market, their building of factory processes, they were not as competent with, and that's what led to the bankruptcy. But some of it is just simplicity, that we're sitting, in some cases, these containers right next to the substation fence, so it's figuring out, okay, are we paying for what portion of the property that is actually owned by the city through the Hagerstown Light Department? So my recollection when we worked this out before with the county was that exempting both was as much a matter of simplicity, and then paying the 25% of the business personal property tax, which is the much bigger tax, just to keep it clean.
Just a question on this. So if you're saying the personal property is $200,000, it's going to be discounted by 75%, then you'd be paying $50,000 for year one, correct?
That's just for the year one payment.
Okay. And then looking at this, it's saying 7 equal pilot payments. So wouldn't that be year 1 to year 7 after year 4, correct?
Correct. I mean, as I understand it, it's taken the liability over the entire period. It's not just the year one liability we're talking about.
Okay, so then, but then after, in this scenario, after year 11, I'm assuming you're paying depreciated value is what you're looking at.
Correct.
I'm just making sure.
Commissioners?
So how many new jobs are you anticipating this creating for Washington County? Not the 114 construction jobs, but after it's built out.
Oh, after the build out, so we'll have O&M people here, as well as we'll also use local companies for other type of work we need to have done. So just permanent jobs that will be employed by Inlet, I'd say around 5. But there will also be other companies. Correct. That's correct.
What remains of the pilot if Alevo or the other company didn't file bankruptcy? How much longer would their pilot continue? Are you asking for an extension of what they received? Are you asking for anything additional from what they received? Help me understand that.
Yeah, so we are actually asking for a new pilot, not picking up.
Not just to continue what they had?
Correct.
For how much longer would their pilot be in effect? Was there 7 years also?
It was same language, so it would have been the same structure.
Yeah, so I'd have to look at it again, but everything was structured around a 10-year initial period. So we'd have to go back to 2017 when the project started. So 2.5 years-ish into it. Forgive me if I don't know the exact number.
I mean, but for clarity, we're treating that previous thing as a dead document. I mean, there's,
right.
So this is.
Would we ordinarily,
is
that how it's?
This is meant to replace that.
But would it have to? Could the old document continue in effect just with the new owner? Or is that not how these situations typically work?
It's a different owner.
Yes, it's a different owner.
Yeah. And I think part of the argument is Inalith is doing another capital investment. They're bringing the battery up to its current generation of technology. So it's not the same cost as before. They're actually investing new money. It's almost like a new battery.
So is your pilot just doing that additional upgrade, or is your pilot on everything?
Yeah, it's almost a brand new project in many ways, where you're replacing the vast majority of the equipment. So to answer your previous question, what would have happened to this project if we didn't come along? It would have been dead. No, there was no one to pick it up.
So I did real quick numbers on this, and just so everybody can have. So year 1, we're saying it's a $200,000. I'm assuming that's correct. That would have been a real property tax, correct?
Personal
property.
Real.
So that's and if we take the 75%, that brings us down to $50,000. Okay. If we look through the 7 payments after 4 years, then depreciating schedule, then year 12, we'd be paying $52,000, just to give everybody an estimate. Then that's why it dies off after the 11th year on this, because then we'd be getting approximately 75% of this 200. And if you're looking at the numbers on that each year, now this is my question versus some of the other pilots, is this paid a flat rate? Where the way that this is written, it's actually going to be paying a 75% of the depreciated value. So it's actually going to be reducing for the 11 years, and then it bumps back up to 52,000 year 12. And so that's the way that I see this.
I guess I need it simplified, Court. How much with the pilot? How much without the pilot? Try to do that in 10 words or less.
Do you
While
guys
he's doing
have
the
a
calculations, I have a question if I can. So did you bought this through a bankruptcy sale of some sort? Did you buy this knowing that the pilot that existed would expire and you would have to go through this process?
No. That wasn't assumed. I was not with the company at that point in time, but I'm almost certain that was not assumed. They were just looking at the asset itself.
Yeah, because you said you bought the assets and not the company, so.
Correct.
You're figuring, I'll ask Hagerstown Light something. But give me your whole opinion on this. You've been in it for a couple of years, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't for it, I'm sure of that. But sell me why this is a good thing for you all and for the community.
For us, the new technology on the Hagerstown system, puts us on the map, especially in the county. And the revenue payments coming into us are a benefit, revenue and lease payments. In addition to there could be future potential for demand response and peak shaving, which could lower our electric costs to our customers over time.
Has it lowered it at all at this point? I mean, what benefit to the community has it done?
None really at this point, I would say. Would that be?
Well, it's revenue into the Hagerstown Light Department, which lowers their cost to serve. So
Has it lowered the cost of the community?
Yes, I mean, you have to remember, it's a small project. It's only 2 megawatts.
Okay, I got you.
But yeah, but when you aggregate this project plus the 2 that we are
So
proposing.
yeah.
It's significant.
So I think our assumption is that any revenue into the city, into the Hagerstown Light Department, is an offset to cost.
But if it hasn't helped the citizens yet, it's not a good thing. But I understand your logic. If you build on it, eventually it's going to come to the citizens and reduce their costs. Would everybody agree with that?
Correct.
Or annual increases may not have to be as great as they would otherwise be without that additional.
Right. Gotcha.
So now I just want to make sure, so the way that I read this, the request is 7 equal pilot payments beginning in year 4. So what are we paying year 1 through 3?
0.
Okay, so then I will fix this. So that brings it, just to let everybody know, the taxes, according to you, for the first 11 years would have been $1.369 million to $206,000. That's just so we actually get in real numbers.
1.3 million to
1.36 million to 206,000.
is what we'd be getting, 206,000.
Yes.
Over that period.
Over that 11-year period. Then after on year 12, it does go from about a $17,000 payment up to a $52,000 payment on year 12, assuming a 10% depreciation.
So you took 200,000 we would have paid in the first year, and then you stepped it down 10% per year after that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There is the way the business personal property tax in Maryland works, right? I think it stops at 50% depreciation.
There is a floor. There is a floor.
So it depreciates down to 50%, and then you're paying the tax on that 50% in perpetuity. I'm pretty sure it's 50%. Forgive me, but I played.
That happens in year 8, so I can easily correct that.
just to throw in an idea, what I would be interested in doing is letting whatever length of time the original pilot to Alivo had remaining, I would certainly consider letting that extend out to the new company. I'm afraid that if we increase the battery capacity or upgrade the battery, we're going to run into that same situation with the solar panels down the road. And I know that's a slightly different business than what you're in, but that's a concern that we've had, that we've talked about. What happens when the solar panels need upgrade? Do we still let the pilot continue? I think at some point the project has to prove that it's financially viable. And I would hope that when you purchase these assets that you knew you could make business sense out of it and make a profit. So what I would like to see, what I would support is, let's continue on with whatever length of time the existing pilot that we offered in 2016, whatever time remains, let that continue. So that's a benefit to you. In terms, yeah.
The two new ones, is all the material, or this isn't in place yet, right? It's proposed.
it needs-
Is all the materials ready to go, or is this based on what happens here today?
Well, I don't want to, I don't want to go down that road. Let's just put it this way.
Sort of helps me make a decision.
It's important that we receive it. Would we move forward with the projects? Likely, yes. However, it does threaten its long-term viability. Just because these projects have slim returns already, and we are exposed to a very volatile market.
Yeah, I think
Then you can bring a request in at a later time.
perhaps, yeah, I mean, if that would be permissible, I think this, just to be, this is a new technology, so these guys are taking a risk, right? These are almost, so it's safe technology, that it's all safe, but this is, so my company, we do consulting with all sorts of different battery companies and whatever. Many of them are failing, right? As any new disruptive technology comes in, there's a shaking out of the different companies that survive and have the best technology. So part of the reason Inalith is funding these projects themselves initially versus just licensing it to someone else is that the investment community isn't ready to make these sort of investments in these sort of projects because they're risky. Because of the new technology, and the regional electricity markets keep changing the rules around how you get paid. So it's a fair understanding that they're not making a lot of money off of these projects. This is kind of them getting them out there, proving to the world that it works, and then hopefully making money on future projects. And so any pressure you put on the cost does threaten it. And unfortunately, Maryland has a high business personal property tax compared to other states where it just threatens this type of project a bit more.
My concern with this pilot versus the other pilots that were approved is the other pilots have been a level funding fee throughout 25 years. And the advantage of that is we know our costs go up every single year, and the county's costs go up every single year, and that's a level funding, where if we look at this or the regular thing, that's a depreciating scale. So every year you're giving us less, even though the county's budget's increasing. That's my concern with this. I like the level funding where this is depreciating every single year at a much lower rate. And just to give you the updated amounts, it's $1.3 million to $224,000 over 11 years, since we're not getting anything in this scenario into the first 3 years.
I think I'll be devil's advocate as usual. I think that court, just for conversation, court didn't figure in. I don't think this works without 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it takes. I don't think it works with one. I don't think it saves anybody anything. I don't think it saves the citizens any money. I think the only way it works is if you have more than one. Maybe. We're not even sure of that yet. Court's figures didn't figure in if it did work with 3, we'd have to add a figure how much it saved the community. The electric bills for the humans like me, we'd have to figure that into the equation. But it still seems light, and I understand completely what your thoughts are on this, but I don't think it works with one. So I think, I think you got to have more than one. I think the light department even said, it looks really good, but you need more to be able to pass that on. So I would agree with that. And also money we need to think about correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah or Court or somebody, it's still money we wouldn't have if they don't store the batteries. I mean, you can't figure, my guess is you won't do it if we're, how many million? 1.36 million, but would you do it for 400,000 or instead of 200? See, it's sort of, so that's, I think, where we're at.
So my next question goes in, these two new projects, how many megawatts are they?
4.8 for the first one and 7.2 megawatts for the second one.
And you're saying the $200,000 would be combined, both of them?
Correct.
Now, if everybody would be amenable to something, it seems like this is something that we would be looking at. To give it an equal thing, first of all, I agree with Commissioner Kiefer that every pilot or project that we do does need to have a decommissioning bond. So if after 11 years you decide, hey, we're done, and you shut off powers, I want to make sure that it's taken out. I think that's what you were referring to. Is it?
I wasn't referring to that, but I suppose it ties in.
But what I'm looking at here is for the 12 megawatts, and I'm just throwing out a number, instead of getting the $224,000 depreciating values, that we make a standard payment, and if we did 30,000 or a 30,000 annual at a flat rate over that 11 years, it brings up to 360,000, and it helps us with a flat level paying, and does not have that depreciating value. But it does also help you with that. And again, I'm just throwing out a number from 224. I brought up to 360.
Commissioners, just a reminder, we have a 11 o'clock public hearing. So we could either summarize this and have you come back, or there could be a motion. But I do have 11 o'clock hearing that we're falling behind on.
Well, the commissioners approved it once, and this is a little bit different ballgame, but I would be in agreement with what Court just proposed, sort of what we just said. You wouldn't do it for 200, but maybe for 350 you might do it. So,
Gentlemen, do you want to come back with a better proposal or a different proposal to meet these requirements? What are your thoughts?
I'd be happy to do whatever you prefer. I
Commissioners,
think,
if you have
based on what the commissioner has just laid out, we can likely live with that. But if you'd like me to put forth a formal proposal, I'm happy to do that as well.
Commissioners, do you have any ideas?
I'm not going to support it, and the reason I'm not going to support it, again, if I start a business up in Washington County, you're not going to offer me a pilot program if I come in. If I put an addition on my house, you're not going to give me a pilot program on my taxes if I put an addition on my house and then my assessments increase, so forth. So I've been no on many of the pilots. I know I voted yes 4 years ago or whenever it was brought in, but my position on pilots has changed. So I'm going to.
I would agree to continuing the pilot that was given to the previous company, letting you carry that on, continue that. Whatever dollar amount that happens to be, that would be the max of what I would support, since it was already offered to the previous company. I agree. There's no guarantee, there's no way that we can enforce that those are local jobs that are created. They are temporary, important jobs nonetheless, don't get me wrong, but it's not ongoing. It doesn't sound like yet there is a reduction in the rates to the users. It's technology that's going to continue to need to be upgraded. I know it's still in kind of the R&D phase, and you're having trouble getting investors to buy in. I don't think the government should be in that business of choosing those winners and losers. Let the free market handle that. So I'll be a no.
If we did continue it, for information, that would be, in your scenario, continuing it off of this pace, that'd be $223,000, where I was proposing trying to get 360.
I agree to what we previously.
Yeah, I'm just making so the numbers are there.
well, it makes no sense to me that we've approved it. Well, I wasn't here, but it was approved once, and now we want to approve it for more money, which, I mean, 360,000, that's money we don't have. That's not obtrusive to the neighborhoods. It's not an eyesore. there's a whole bunch of solar panels going up that are in people's backyards. That I could understand. I wouldn't want that either. But we're talking about something that we can give $360,000. I'm in. I don't think it does a bit of good to prolong anything and extend something because you might not build your 1 or 2 sites. It doesn't do any good with one site. We need to see where this goes with 3 sites, and then, so I'd be in with 360 for up in.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments on that?
I would like to see if you could come back with a set, this is what the personal property tax is, this is what the offset would be, and I would like to come back with a number there so we can actually see it instead of me doing the numbers here. Let's put them up on the screen so everybody can see it, and then it gets, the full disclosure. I would like to see that, and if you could also at the same time put it what was previously approved, so that we can see that compared what it would go against.
All right, that sounds like a plan, gentlemen. Would you
Thank you.
agree to come back? We'll have staff contact you and get a date scheduled. Thank you all very much.
Just a reminder, President Klein, if I can, I'll be headed to the Commission on Aging roundtable meeting with Secretary Rona Kramer.
We'll vote on everything we can while you're at.
You do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job. All right. Next on our schedule is a public hearing, text amendments to building tax excise. Ashley, would you come forward? Next on the agenda is a public hearing concerning the text amendments to the building excise tax ordinance. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will first have staff introduce the matter, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the hearing will close. The commissioners may then discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Mr. Holloway, would you introduce the matter?
Thank you, Commissioners. I am introducing to you an amendment to the building excise tax. There are 3 amendments before you. The one amendment that especially pertains to my division is to keep going the sunset provision that is in section 7.08. I would like to extend that until July 1st of 2022. The reason being is this provision excludes payment for change of uses when it goes from non-residential, non-retail to non-residential retail, and excludes payment for excise tax for non-residential retail to non-residential, non-retail. This was first brought in back in 2013, I believe. Developers were complaining about the amount of excise tax that was being paid when they were changing from one use to another. So this provision was set in to stop those payments temporarily to look at the situation and see how to move forward. Well, that expired in July 1st of this year, and we received more complaints about that from different developers. So I would like to extend this sunset provision to 2022 to give myself, which I'm new to this position, time for my division to give time to look at this, to thoroughly do some research to see how this provision will affect the county if we were to make it a permanent provision or to just let it expire and do no more with it. And so there are 2 other amendments here. I'll just speak to them briefly. I want to thank the county attorney's office for bringing this to my attention when it came to the amendment here. They just want to include fire and EMS to the building excise tax waiver because they are government buildings as well, and they're not listed in this ordinance here, so they want to add that language to them so those buildings could be excluded from the tax. And also to just completely remove section 13 because that committee no longer exists.
Ashley, as I finish your introduction,
Yes.
we will now open the hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward, give us your name and address, and tell us what you would like to know. Is there anyone in the gallery who would wish to testify? Seeing none, do the commissioners have any questions? Hearing none, the public hearing is now concluded. Commissioners, your comments on thoughts on your action today.
So by adding the fire and rescue and ambulance companies, all we're doing is waiving the taxes on an addition or a new facility that any of the companies may be constructing.
That is correct. They would be part of the excise tax waiver, yes.
I'm not sure I understand the part that you want to extend to June 30th, 2022. Would you go over that again?
Yes. When someone comes and does a change of use, which that means if you were, let's say, if you were changing from a transportation hub to you on a private transportation company, and you want to change that property to now be a hair salon, that will kick in the bill the excise tax because you're changing the use of the property from transportation hub to a hair salon. And a lot of developers were complaining about that amount of money that were being charged for this tax. And that's what kicked in this provision back in 2013 to see how to deal with those issues. And it was first introduced in 2013, then was reintroduced in 2015. And when it was introduced in 2015, that's when they said, well, let's extend it to 2019. And then this year it expired. And so when it kicked back in, we received more complaints, and then that's what led us here today.
If I may ask the question, I remember in 2015 going through this sunset. And is it correct that the sunset extension is more expedient than simply eliminating the tax because it has been extended a number of times?
Well, the reason this is here is because there's a differential in the rates that are charged for commercial uses.
Absolutely.
If I recall correctly, retail space is taxed at the highest rate, and commercial non-retail is at a lesser rate. So where the rub comes in is when there's a conversion from a commercial use to a retail use or vice versa. And that's what the sunset provision applied for. Basically kept a level playing field, and part of that was for economic development reasons, I think.
I understand that. The premise being that it's been sunset now a second time. It was first installed, it was sunset, it was extended and extended. The question is it more expedient to do exactly what's being requested here, which is what I understand, or to actually consider at some future time actually allowing this to actually change the language permanently to forego the continuing sunset clause?
That would be a policy preference of the commissioners. Obviously, it would remove the distinction between the commercial uses. That type of change would probably have to be re-advertised because it's a larger change than what we actually took to public.
And that's how I understood it. And really the question is to help address questions that we've received as well as future questions. We're doing this because it is more expedient. Perhaps in future ordinance revisions, they would be more permanently adopted, perhaps.
I think this is just to provide some breathing room to allow the county to explore that. Certainly in the window of time between now and when the sunset occurs, we'd have time and opportunity to move in a different direction if that's what the county wanted to do.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Commissioners' comments, how would you like to proceed?
Do we have to close the public hearing?
Public hearing has already been closed, I believe, yes.
I would be in acceptance of this as long as we don't come back to this, as long as we immediately come back and look at what do we want the long-term provisions of this sunset. I don't want to sit there and 3 years later have to, kick the can down the road. Are we going to keep it, or are we going to you know.
Well, don't extend it to 2022 then.
No, I'm fine with extending 2022 because things happen. You know, things happen. But let's actually look at it. And, you know, if we're going to accept it, say we're going to accept it. If we're going to get rid of it, let's get rid of it. So if we're amenable to that, then I'm 100% with
Motion?
this. I'll make the motion to accept the recommended recommended adjustments to the building excise tax ordinance. As long as we look at 7.08, the special provision, sunset provisions, in the near
To
future.
include fire and EMS is what you're also stating.
Yeah, the recommended changes that are there, so fire and EMS in the 2022.
You have a motion?
I'll second it.
Is there a second discussion? Yeah, I'm okay with bringing it back up. Rob, you'll have to get that scheduled with staff so we can maybe a little more prompt on that, but we have time. So we have a first and a second to approve. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All in favor, 4-0. Thank you. Next, Town of Hancock Memorandum of Understanding. Rich Eichelberger, Ashley, and Mr. Gilbert, welcome.
Morning, Commissioners. Rich Eichelberger, Director of Construction. I have with me today Ashley Holloway, Director of Plan Review and Permitting, and also Joseph Gilbert, who is the Town Manager for the Town of Hancock. We're here today to present to the Commissioners a recommended motion to move to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Town of Hancock to provide building code enforcement, permitting, and inspection services. The Town of Hancock has requested the county to provide building code enforcement, permitting, and inspection services within the town limits. Washington County previously had provided these services within the town limits of Hancock for many years. In 2017, the county was notified by the town that they desired to perform these tasks themselves, and the county ceased providing those services. Currently, the town issues the building permits, and inspection services are provided by a third-party inspection firm. At this time, the permit holder submits the permitting fees to the town and pays the third-party firm for the inspection services. The town of Hancock has requested to reestablish these services with Washington County. A resolution has been approved by the town of Hancock Mayor and Council, and an MOU has been vetted by the county attorney's office and has received signatures by the mayor and town clerk. This would be a savings for the town of Hancock residents by foregoing any additional inspection fees, and really the only alternative would be for the town to continue services as they're provided today. Ashley, do you have any?
If this were to go through my division, which is again plan review and permitting, we will handle the permits for the town. Like Director Eichelberger said, right now we're not doing anything with Hancock, so we will handle the permits. Now, zoning approval will still come from the town. So once the customer has zoning approval from the town, then they could come to my office and apply for their building permits.
How many permits does Hancock have in a year's time, or 6 months, or a month, or a day, whatever?
Sir, I'd probably estimate 12 to 15, depending, but
That's a year, or?
I probably have done that many since in the
Yes.
last 6 months.
6 months, so maybe 30 a year, 40?
Maybe.
Can we, do you have personnel, Ashley, to handle that?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we would have to undertake some internal changes to our permitting system, which would be handled by my chief of permitting, Becky Gander. She's already put together what she needs to do and about how long, so we are definitely on top of that.
As part of that whole process, we've looked at that with Ashley's staff and basically come up with a timeline of how long this would take. So we would be anticipating, if approved, that we would reestablish those services with the town of Hancock somewhere around October 1st. Because again, as Ashley said, there's some things with automation that have to be scripted, tested before it's loaded. We'll need to meet with Joe and his staff so that as the citizens contact the town of Hancock, that they can give them the proper information as far as contacting Ashley's office for the permitting process, our office of construction for the inspection services. So we think we can make this happen fairly quickly, but it would be something that we wouldn't be able to start tomorrow.
Now, on the inspection side, I'm assuming that our inspections countywide and Hancock's inspections are very similar, that we wouldn't have to have additional inspection or something new outside of the scope of what you normally do.
No, like I said, we've provided those services before, and of course, we have inspectors who cover that area. They already cover outside of the town limits surrounding Hancock, so it doesn't put a large additional burden on our staff.
So for a permit, the Hancock resident would drive down to our county building and do the permit, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Daggone, you're gonna make all them mad driving the whole way down here for a permit.
They can't apply for the permit at the town office of Hancock, and then Hancock forward the
Well,
information.
to standardize things, and maybe Ashley would rather speak to this, but I know that that's been an issue that we'd had in the past, and it complicated things. So to be more consistent with all the other towns, this would be fall in line with what we do currently with the other towns.
So we do every other town in Washington County?
We currently do Williamsport, Funkstown, and Sharpsburg.
And how long has Hancock been doing their own permitting?
About 2 years.
So we did it prior.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Gilbert,
I just see on the form here, Hancock, you forgot to get Tim Smith's signature.
There was an issue with his perception of the timeliness of the response from the county, which is
Oh, so he's not gonna sign it.
correct.
I thought you might have missed it. Sorry.
Commissioners, any other comments? Is there a motion to accept?
I'd motion to accept.
I have a first, is there a second? Terry, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Gilbert, come back soon.
Thank you.
Next, House Keys Program, Sarah.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer.
Deborah Kondo, Deputy Director of Human Resources.
We're here today before you to request elimination of the House Keys program from our county government. The House Keys program was established more than a decade ago by the county commissioners to provide down payment assistance to full-time county employees. Unfortunately, the program's burdens and risks outweigh its benefits, and staff is recommending that the program be discontinued. The policy was adopted on January 20th, 2007 to encourage homeownership in Washington County. There are stipulations for the program, such as the employee must be eligible for and receive an MMP loan, and that the employee must meet the Community Development Association guidelines as they relate to income limits. These loans, again, were for $5,000. Certain circumstances would trigger payback of the loans, including the sale of the home, payment in full of the mortgage, and voluntary or involuntary termination or resignation from the employee. In a case that did involve termination or resignation of the employee, the loan of $5,000 would be paid back annually at $1,000 per year. 8 employees have utilized the program since its inception. The county does file appropriate paperwork to secure an interest against the property. However, the county's loan would be junior to the primary loan that would have been used to acquire the property. A foreclosure action on the primary loan would extinguish the security interest of any junior loans, including the county's loans. So there have been cases in the past and could be cases in the future where the county would not receive the $5,000 back. The program does require significant employee time to administer, while the benefit of the program is relatively minimal. Because the burdens and risks of the program outweigh its benefits, it is suggested that the commissioners consider termination of this program. And this is brought to you today by myself, obviously the HR director who administers the program, and then the county attorney has also been involved in this process.
I don't even get that program right now. Why can't a county employee just go down to the home store and do it on their own? CDA's down there, they give you assist. It's the same thing you just did here. Wonder why?
I don't know, sir.
Oh, okay.
I think they can.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah,
I know, that was
so-
my point.
Yep, I understand.
So why are we doing it?
So
It was a program that was being pushed by the Department of Housing and Community Development at the state level. And I guess at the time, this was seen as an additional employee benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good, I mean, times were tough 10 years ago, so I guess we were looking for, they were tougher than what they are now. They were, we were fourth in the state in foreclosures, but yeah, I mean, we can do it, right, we can do it today if someone eligible, so, yeah,
Is that a motion?
It was well-intentioned, but it's an administrative nightmare.
to me, that's a motion to eliminate
Have
it.
a motion? Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to eliminate the house keys program.
Okay, that's a first and a second.
Just to clarify, we would continue to, our efforts in getting back the money that we have loaned out to date. We would not be forgiving those amounts. I wanted to
Those
make that very
contracts are still
clear.
in place.
Exactly.
That-
We
yeah.
just wouldn't be loaning anymore.
Yeah, that was my question, was the 8 people that we've given. One, of those 8, how many have been repaid?
I think 5, I think 2 were either foreclosed or bankruptcy.
So we have basically 1 outstanding?
Actually, I think we have 2 or 3 outstanding. Do we have 2 or 3?
Okay, so
2
we
or
have
3
two out-
outstanding, excuse me,
Okay,
yes.
there's a first and a second. To a motion to approve the elimination.
We have a
Excuse me, motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
4-0, thank you. Next up, intergovernment cooperative purchase, Rick Curry.
Good morning, Rick Curry, Director of Purchasing.
Good morning, Jack Rayner, Highway Department Fleet Manager.
Morning, Zane Rao, Assistant Director, Highway Department.
Subject for you is intergovernmental cooperative purchase, INTG 19-0017. The request is for 2 dump trucks. The move is to authorize by resolution the Highway Department to purchase 2 dump trucks from Potomac Truck Center Incorporated of Bladensboro, Maryland, at a cost for $205,500 per truck, and also to purchase extended warranties for each one of those trucks at a cost of $3,241 for a total cost of $417,482, and also to utilize a contract that was awarded by Howard County, contract number 4400003267. The trucks that are being replaced are 18 years old and they meet the county's guideline for replacement. Those trucks will be offered on gov deals for auctioning to the highest bidder. And the Code of Public Laws allow this board to procure goods and services that are awarded by another entity. And that because the leverage of the economy of scales that Howard County has able to secure with this contract with Potomac Truck Sales Center, we feel this is the best option to purchase these vehicles under. Also, you can see the fiscal impact in the department's budget, where the trucks will be budgeted to be paid for. We have concurrences from the deputy director. And also, you have a list of alternatives if you wish not to proceed with this procurement. Are there any questions?
Explain, we go to Bladensburg because of that we transferred a contract or something, or what,
We actually piggyback Howard County's contract. Howard County awarded it to Potomac Truck Center, and we have to utilize that contract through that entity.
Okay, so we don't have an option to buy it in a local.
Well, we've tried that before, and that does not work in our favor.
Okay, I
When we
understand.
buy trucks that have a large volume of pool of opportunity of buying, we get a better price.
Thank you.
So when you put the RFP out, you specifically state you want Mack dump trucks?
We did not put an RFP out. The RFP was issued by Howard County. So because they selected Mack Truck, and we are asking to utilize their contract, under the Code of Public Laws, we have to use that contract as written. We cannot modify.
So we can't do both an RFP and utilize the Howard County contract?
That would not be, I would not advise that, because now you're actually out, you're shopping, because if Howard County's already put together a specification, and we have tried to do our own in-house RFPs, or not RFP, but a bid for buying trucks, and because we're only buying 2 trucks, the pricing is not favorable for us to do our own bid. That's why you see in my RF, I state that the economy of scales and the savings are more beneficial to use this contract as opposed to doing our own bid.
But we wouldn't know what the savings would be if we wouldn't put the truck out for bid.
We have past history where we have done these in the past, and that savings is rather significant.
When's the last time we tried putting bids out?
2015 would have been the last bid.
Yes.
That was single bid, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did a single bid, and we had to wind up rejecting that bid because they came in over budget, and we still had to go back and utilize another jurisdiction's contract because the pricing was more favorable.
Commissioners, any more comments? There's a recommended motion to authorize. Your motion?
Making the motion to authorize the resolution for the Highway Department to purchase the 2 Mack trucks using Howard County's award.
Second, I have first and second. Any further discussion?
Maybe we could have a little discussion as to how, not today, but at some point in time, how we could at least figure out a way to consider our local businesses to participate in some sort of a bid process.
We don't have any local heavy distributors.
Try to be.
Well, it's not.
But it's not their contract.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too, because we're gonna ask you that question next time you're back, so. Might have a better answer next time.
Well, what I see
I'll
is
give you
like
better.
that this Howard County might be buying 100 trucks and we're trying to buy 2. There's still going to be significantly less through that. So we have some type of obligation to consider both. Okay, how many, first and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. 4-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. Intent to convey rural property, I believe that's Mr. Moser. Please come forward, sir. And please introduce that gentleman with you. Holy cow, hey.
Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator. Joining me is Sid Mashat, Broker. Move to adopt the ordinance declaring properties located on Jefferson Boulevard, Tax Map 50, Parcel 1737, and Hunters Green Parkway, Tax Map 48, Parcel 930, and Tax Map 48, Parcel 947 as surplus, and approve the conveyance of the same and authorize the execution of the necessary documentation to finalize the conveyance. Notice of the county's intent to convey this property was duly advertised on August 6th, 13th, and 20th. Staff is ready to transfer the property as described to the below stated buyers. These properties were listed on the open market in May 2019, and the following offers were received. The county will continue to own 0.2921 acres of the Jefferson Boulevard parcel. Hunters Green Parkway, 39 acres. Buyer Philip and Melanie Thurber. Offer price $51,268. And Jefferson Boulevard, 2.1637 acres. Buyer Richard and Susan Daughtridge. Offer price $18,300. And any questions I can answer or Sid could answer.
No, motion to approve.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Come back and stay longer, Mr. Michaud.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up, FY '20 School Resource Officer. Please come forward, introduce yourself.
I'm Captain Mark Knight from the Sheriff's Office on behalf of Sheriff Mullendorf.
Stephanie Lee Poole, Senior Grant Manager with the Office of Grant Management.
And Jeff Prude, Chief Operating Officer, Washington County Public Schools.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm here for a motion for consideration for submitting a grant application for the fiscal year 20 School Resource Officer Adequate Coverage Grant. In brief, the governor has appropriated $10 million in general funds for the fiscal year 2020 for a grant issuing to local law enforcement agencies and local school systems. The allocation for Washington County is $318,246. The grant would provide salaries and fringe benefits to 2 school resource officers for the Springfield Middle and Ruth Ann Monroe primary schools, as well as vehicles and equipment. The budget includes $193,560 for salaries and fringe and $124,686 for equipment and vehicles. According to the ARF here, there's no funding match that's required. And of course, after the first year grant, it would have to be decided where that funding comes from if the grant doesn't continue into the second, third, fourth, fifth year.
How does it currently work? Who pays for the school resource officers now?
So currently, school resource officer paid out of the school system's general operating fund. This is a new grant issued by the governor. We don't have any reason to believe that it's not going to extend for multiple years. And as of about 10 minutes ago, we have new information that we may be able to assign future grants to the same officers. So as we extend the program, the campuses that we're asking to cover under this grant are not currently covered with resource officers that are assigned to those locations. They're covered from other officers. So moving forward, we may be able to extend the future grants to cover these FTEs in subsequent years, as long as the governor continues to allocate the money out of his budget.
Real quick question. It says there's $124,000 for vehicles and equipment for 1 year. Wouldn't a vehicle, isn't that going to be owned, so we don't have to continue paying for it, or are we leasing?
No, it exactly right. What you're saying is that would be a first year purchase, and then we would continue to use the sheriff's office policy for vehicles and equipment for future years. So yes, that first year would be just a first year purchase.
One-time purchase.
Right, one-time purchase. And then that vehicle would last as long as it lasts under our policy as far as for mileage and so forth.
Gotcha. So in the same scenario, if the next year we got a 318 grant, that would cover 193, and then we don't need to buy another $124,000 a vehicle.
Exactly.
Right.
Perfect.
We could grow the program, and my
Exactly.
understanding, what I'm hearing this morning is that we may be able to allocate remaining dollars to current expenses as long as it covers our adequate coverage plan. So in the future years, maybe we don't extend, if we don't add more SROs to the program, it could offset dollars that are being spent. It could supplant dollars that are already being spent in general fund budgets.
The current grant does not allow you to supplant and use existing SROs. Is that correct? The one that's under discussion here today?
That is correct. It does not allow supplanting.
But that's a question I think that is raised this morning. I think the sheriff is at the sheriff's convention. I was just on a phone conversation with our representative from the Center for School Safety, and so there's a question that we're going to hammer out before you make a decision next week. We'll have more new information as the week progresses.
So you don't want us to make a motion on this because the motion here is to add 2 SROs.
My understanding was that today's presentation was not for vote.
Okay.
It's listed as for
Information,
information.
right.
The commissioners can certainly move forward faster if you wish, but it is for information. Just also for the commissioners' information, the deadline for this is September 20.
That's correct.
Is that correct? So we wanted to get this before you a week earlier, at least.
Because I know adding additional resource officers is a high priority, and I'd be comfortable moving forward to add additional resource officers.
I'm
Got a
good.
motion?
I'm good with it, yes, sir.
Second?
If that's amenable, I'd make the motion to accept the grant for the additional SRO officers, and it's saying in here, I don't remember the schools off the top of my head.
Springfield Middle and Ruth Ann.
Springfield Middle and Ruth Ann Monroe to add additional resource officer and vehicles.
Second.
Okay, we have first and a second. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next on the agenda, fourth quarter adjustments. Welcome back, Jeff, and who's that guy with you?
David Brandenburg, Executive Director of Finance.
We knew that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioners, glad to be here today to present to you the fourth quarter budget adjustments from the Washington County Public Schools. As we always say, the annotated code of Maryland requires local school systems to periodically reforecast their financial needs. With the fourth quarter, these are the final results. This is the final allocation of revenues and expenditures that we're seeking your approval on. These have been reviewed by the Board of Education's Finance Committee. They were approved last week by the Board of Education at their business meeting on Tuesday. And subsequent to your approval today, it is the intent of the Board of Education to designate the remaining fund balance, which was $586,839, towards the capital improvements at the technical high school for the 2 new programs there that are being added in artificial intelligence, cloud computing, as well as the applied manufacturing engineering program. So we are in design for those renovations that'll be taking place this summer to launch those new programs next fall. It's also worth noting for you that that fund balance that is remaining at the end of this year represents simply just 1/5 of 1% of the dollars allocated to the school system.
So different than what's in the motion is being moved to the general fund, this is being moved to the capital improvements.
Right, so your approval is simply on the adjustments, to approve the adjustments, which drops the money into the fund balance for the school system. The school system then takes the opportunity to designate that money to a particular fund or purpose out of their fund balance. They put it in designated fund balance, which they did as a motion last week, pending your approval of the adjustments today. So in essence, your approval today allows the money to sit into fund balance, but you're not actually deciding where that money goes. The Board of Ed gets to decide where that money is allocated to.
Oh, I understand
But
that.
you're suggesting where you're putting it.
That's
for
the Board of
good faith
Education, that's where the
convers-
Board of Education wants to put it.
For good faith conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was asking, because if it was just going to go as what's on here is the undesignated fund balance, as what we have here, I would like to know where that money's being utilized, and where you're saying capital improvements, I am 100% on board
Yes.
with taking one-time savings being moved to capital.
And that's the board's intent through their motion last week.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?